Yes, welcome to the Blue Room. We are here on a Monday for the first of what's going to be a new weekly show. It's going to be called Blue Monday. We are exhausting all the blue puns we can here on the Blue Room for our shows. But it's going to be myself and Dave Downey. It's going to be free every week. It's going to be available on YouTube as well. So if you're listening to us, do leave a rating, do leave a review. It all helps. And if you want to watch us on YouTube and see, well, only myself today because Dave's got his camera off, but I'm reliably informed he will have it on from next week. But we are building a bit of a community over there as well. So do head over to YouTube. If you watch us on YouTube, do subscribe as well. But Dave, how are you doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I think when we come up with doing this show again, made me think back to a long, long time when we've done this sort of thing, just me and you chatting on about stuff. Partly because it was only me and you at the start of the Blue Room. We didn't have any other contributors going, did we?
Well, yeah. I think it's we've always sort of wanted to do a show on a Monday.
Yeah.
Which sort of felt like the right time. And I'd say it's probably going to be about 80% Everton and then 20% bits and pieces from
Yeah.
across,
Well, there's a lot of
wider
other things
football.
that happens over the weekend that I know we've got one to talk about later in this show, but there'll be stuff that crop up, won't there? Ridiculous games, ridiculous goals, ridiculous VAR stuff, no doubt as well that we'll be talking about, and they'll probably be Everton related anyway. So, yeah, but obviously most of the Blues and much more of a pleasant chat now they're actually doing all right.
Yeah, 100%. So just to give people a bit of a form, like a review of the format, we're going to start off by naming our Everton player of the weekend to begin the show. And that could be Dave. It could be one from the men's team, could be one from the women's team, could be somebody from the academy. Putting no shackles on that really as we go forward, because there might be the odd weekend, which wasn't like last weekend, where Everton men don't play particularly well, and there are, so we might need to broaden it out a little bit going forward. But a few candidates this weekend, and then we're going to sort of have a bit of a second look back at the game at the weekend, whatever that may have been, and then we're going to just sort of open up to wider football and each have a chat about a moment from football in general that caught our attention this weekend, and finish off with that. So Dave, I'll throw it over to you first. Obviously, a great win at the weekend for the Blues, 3-2 at Crystal Palace. Something about that scoreline against these, isn't there? Which
Yeah.
always seems to crop up. And we had a couple of 3-2s at Goodison in about 2013, 2014 as well, which we were on the wrong end of. Obviously, we had that one in 2022, which will live on in the memory for a while, and this one as well. But interesting one in terms of a player of the weekend, really, Dave, or player of the match from this game, because there's a few different candidates, but who did you decide to go with in the end?
Well, when I say this one, Matt, I think that the listeners will instantly say you're just saying this to try and like cause a bit of controversy. But I think just to throw in a couple first, and I know you'll probably pick one of these, but obviously, um, Garner, who scores the goal at the end, and when he came on for Onana was superb. I think. Centre back wise, I thought it was probably the weakest performance I've seen from a couple of players, including Brandt White. I thought that was a difficult one for him. Mikalenko just continues to become better than Leighton Baines. But my pick is quite remarkably, given where he's been, and I quoted him the other day as going from zero to hero, is actually Ashley Young. And since he's been with us, and I've kicked off over him being a 38-year-old who should have ended his career when he was 28, I thought he was excellent against Crystal Palace. I thought he had Harrison in front of him as well, who helped him quite a lot, which I think was the idea against Brighton. But many people, including me, were very, very critical of Young himself for getting ripped apart by Brighton's top class left winger. But I thought sorry.
Matoma, yeah.
Matoma, yeah. And yeah, I thought that was as solid a performance I've seen from him in Everton share, but also I think you take away the context of who he is and when he came to us and all the furore that we had over that. I thought he was excellent against Crystal Palace, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for how he was.
Do you know what the biggest compliment I can pay him from that game is that, like, there were times where I just forgot he was there.
Yeah.
Whereas like I thought, which indicated that he was doing his job. I think as a defender or defensive midfielder, like that's kind of what you want. Whereas last week, I thought he played well for an hour, but he was actively involved in the game all the time because I think Brighton were targeting his side, with Matoma and Milner in that first half. But yeah, I think it was obvious to me that he had a week's rest and therefore looked a lot sharper. There wasn't a spell in the game late on where it looked like he was really flagging. I think a few players maybe looked like they were a little bit, but I think it's an interesting shout. And I think as long as he gets sufficient rest between games, no, I mean, by that I mean a full week. I reckon he can be an asset to us wherever he plays, be it right back or left back. I think it's just when it comes up to the Christmas period now, you don't want him to be playing on the 27th and then the 30th or whenever we've got our games. It feels like you need to actually put some trust in Patterson or somebody else at times. But I think you're right in terms of how well he played at the weekend. But I mean, it's for me, Dave. It's got to be Mikalenko. It involved in the first two goals so much in terms of the first one. It's his shot that gets deflected, goes out wide, and he's there with the header. The second goal, he actually makes a great run forward and puts a cross in, which Gay puts behind for the corner, which in turn leads to the goal as well. Then as the shot, which hits the post, the force to Decore. I don't know what it is that has happened with him, or whether it's something they've been working on necessarily, but it just seems to have just kind of all come together for him recently. I think he's been helped a little bit by McNeil's playing a bit more narrow now, which gives him space on that left hand side to get forward a bit more. But it just seems like he's sort of been freed up over the last few weeks, and I don't think he's going to carry on getting goals and assists every week. But as he approaches 2 years as an Everton player, it's definitely the best he's looked in the blue shirt, isn't it?
Well, again, he mentioned that about Young. This is very similar, but a little bit higher up the ladder than him. I mean, you think back to how critical people were in terms of defensively. Thought he'd be getting ripped apart by a lot of players in the Premier League. There was a lot of baggage that came with him, but obviously what's happened in his home country and whatnot. And I had a lot of sympathy with him initially when he joined us with that. And then it looked to me like a player who'd just always be on the bench. He'd end up going somewhere else for a lot cheaper than we actually purchased him for. And then I think there's been times where he's had to be played at left back, given the lack of choice on that side. Various reasons why he was consistently still in the 11. But, you'd look at him and you'd see a lot of people rolling their eyes that he was playing at left back and hopefully not the player that caused us any trouble in the game. By and large, I don't think that was too much of a case with a bit of hindsight. Because look, let's face it, similar to Young, but obviously a lot younger, it's a very easy position to criticise. I think when you've got a left back who we've had Leighton Baines, let's face it, anybody who comes in after him is going to be a letdown when you compare to what Leighton Baines was as a legend for many years. And yeah, I think you're right I think it's a really interesting question that you've put forward there in terms of, I don't know if this is Sean Dyche working with him, every single day or every few hours a day to tell him how he wants him to play at left back, or whether this has just come in naturally because of everything else that goes on with him, and even himself starting to get a little bit more confidence. And I put it back to this on one of the weeklies last week, was the goal he scores against Brighton. Every single person ran up that pitch to celebrate with him, apart from Jordan Pickford for obvious reasons.
He's well liked, definitely, doesn't he?
Yeah, and it looked to me like there's he's really comfortable, and obviously there wasn't anything obvious to that previous to those sort of experiences and the games that he's had lately. And I think you mentioned last week about that goal he scored against Leicester, and you think, has he actually got that? He very nearly did the exact same in terms of creating that for Decore. But yeah, I think the positions you've seen him in as well, there's a lot more confidence growing in his game, because you mentioned the header that he scored after getting it out to the right-hand side and getting whipped in. No idea why any left-back I know he's obviously ran in after passing the ball out there, but the way he wins a header in the 6-yard box, you ever imagine a general left-back doing that, let alone one that seems to be finding what he needs to do in Premier League. I think he deserves immense credit, that lad. And defensively as well. The thing I wanted to refer to him about was against Salah at Anfield. I know people can say that this. I was serious saying this. We actually watched the full game. I know Salah scored two in it, but Mykolenko had him all afternoon. And I mean all afternoon. I've spoken to a lot of Liverpool fans who've said Salah did absolutely nothing because he was taking him on. He was winning the ball all the time. He was knocking it upfield. Salah had nothing around him. Those are big gets for him. You know, when you think about a young lad getting some confidence in that position, then yeah, I mean, I can't. He's at the. I know I mentioned Ashley Young, but I can't imagine anybody else who's near the top of the list in terms of people who've impressed for us in the last few weeks.
Yeah, and I think as well, I'm just trying to think about why this may have come about. And like I think the players we both picked, maybe there's something in that. You know, Ashley Young, as much as when you think about him at his best, he is somebody who gets to the byline, cuts inside, and puts crosses into the box. Like maybe there's been a bit of a realization in the last few weeks, certainly since that game at Anfield, that if you're going to play Young, he's effectively going to play as sort of a tucked in third centre back. Like, do you know like how Coleman was playing at times last season in the team? Like, 'cause you look at them, and while they still work hard, they just can't get forward anymore. And maybe with that in mind, and Young being a bit more of a defensive fullback who's gonna sit and back up the players as opposed to overlap all the time and get crossed into the box. Maybe that's just giving Mykolenko a bit more freedom to get forward. And you know, I don't think this is going to continue by any means. Him scoring and getting assists every week, because I don't really think he's that type of player. But I think what we've seen from him at times is that he is a strong runner. Like he can get down the line and get at the crosses, and he can be strong when he's carrying the ball. So I don't think there's any reason why he can't. I don't think he'll necessarily be a constant creative presence for us on the left-hand side, but I think he can be an outlet. I think that's something he definitely can be, because he's got the running power and the energy to do that. Whereas you look at Young on the other side, and while he's got some attributes that are positive, he just physically cannot do that anymore. So perhaps there's been a bit of a shift in regards to, maybe we all thought Young was going to be that fullback who would be a bit more creative and getting forward more. But actually, as it's turned out, it's going to be Mykolenko, and that's how the balance has kind of worked.
Yeah, it is. And it was go back to the question I asked there. It'd be interesting to see what our listeners get back to us in. There's a lot of facets to what Dyche has done, which have put us into a decent run and make us look a little bit more comfortable. And I don't know if that's one of those things. And you mentioned Ashley Young. I mean, you don't put it past a couple of, especially an experienced lad like him, referring to the fact he's 38 years old. He hasn't got the pace he used to, so that I think it makes it pretty obvious that he's not going to be charging down the line, trying to get to the byline and whip crosses in. He gets forward now and again, but I think you're right. It's a little bit more easy if players are looking to do that. If anybody else is looking to pile forward there, you generally leave a centre back and him there. You've got two protecting this day 10 on the counter attack. And I think Mykolenko's he's definitely benefiting from it, Matt. And I like the way there's a confidence in getting the ball to midfield. You know, when the ball's getting diagonally put in by Branthwaite or Tarkovsky looking in to play a diagonal, he's heavily involved in that now, and the ball's getting headed to him a lot more. So that's obviously a lot more confidence with him in that. And like you said, we're bigging him up here, and like it'll be good if he doesn't score 3 in the next 3 games when we come back after the international break. But yeah, I hope it continues the way he's been, because it's lovely to see something like that with a lad who came to us who looked relatively shy. Obviously, we don't know him behind closed doors, but looked very shy. Looked a little bit intimidated, as most players who've never played in the Premier League would probably feel. And now has done a complete 180, and it's a really nice thing to see when you see somebody who looks so humble as well. Not someone who looks like he's got an attitude like any other footballer that you typically see. There's an emotional side of, I think, what of us watching him see, and yeah, long may it continue.
Yeah, he's very easy sort of lad to root for and want to do well, isn't he? Like that. That's a given, and I'm glad he's doing it 100%. So just on the game itself then, Dave, I'll encourage people to go and listen to the post-match podcast you and Pete did as well. Not only for both of your expert analysis, but also for the audio at the start from our mate Maggie, and I think Laura and Connor were down there as well. Sound like an absolutely superb away end at Selhurst. But just on reflection, I mean, on my thoughts, like I was sort of sitting there watching it, albeit on a phone screen in a pub in the middle of Anglesey. Signal was a bit in and out, but from what I saw, I don't think Everton played amazingly.
No.
But I think it was a match that was very much about the intangibles for us, in the sense that there were so many times in that game where I sort of, sat back in my seat, shrugged my shoulders, and went, "Oh, we're going to lose this now, or the roof's gonna come in here." One of them was after 4 minutes when they equalised. The other one was in the second half when they got it back to 2-2, and they were piling the pressure on. And you just sort of thought that, knowing Everton as intimately as we do, that it was only going to go one way. But the things that, Sean Dyche talks about in terms of mentality, in terms of tenacity, in terms of having the right mindset, all these things that you can't necessarily quantify with stats and and numbers and that kind of thing. They were all on show in abundance, and credit to the players on the pitch, because while they weren't at the best, they didn't play necessarily really well from an attacking point of view. When those moments came about, they were ruthless. They were so clinical, and it feels a long way off from what we saw at the start of last season, start of this season, even when we were getting in those positions in those home games, creating chance after chance, and he went sticking them away. So it was sort of very much an inverse of what we saw at the start of the season, and I couldn't have been more delighted.
Yeah, performance like that is very much what you'd expect from the way we line up. I mean, I don't know whether it's a conversation that sort of I think many of us have kept speaking about for quite some time, in terms of the way in which a typical Sean Dyche side would be playing in the Premier League. And there's been a big stereotype towards him, obviously, from the Burnley years. The only time when he's been able to keep Burnley in the Premier League has been going through a really not very fashionable style of play. You don't really want to be a fan there watching this in the ice. It's ice cold over Christmas. You don't want to go to Turf Moor and watch them with 10% possession in games and just trying to hoof it up to Ashley Barnes and the like. I think there's a lot of we said this with a hell of a lot with managers over the years, but there is a pragmatism to what he plays. It seems to me now that there's Michalenko probably throw that into the field of what I'm saying here, but getting the best out of the squad we've got, getting the best out of the players we've got. And yeah, of course, that's going to take some time. He came in, well, pretty much halfway through last season. We just about stayed up. But if you look at Everton's performance against Crystal Palace, you would not think that was played by a team that had only been taught by a manager for just over a year. To me, it looked like you're getting the best out of every single player that you've got on the team. And substitution's always been a massive bugbear of mine. And I thought it was an expert way that he did that, which is the complete opposite to last week against Brighton. I thought that the substitutions he made was appalling, given the amount of time he put them in. And I know we've carried on about this for years. Substitutions going on far too late. Against Crystal Palace was the complete opposite of what he did against Brighton. But what you're talking about there in general about the game, the way it panned out, and I think, refer to this quite a lot. Whenever we scored an early goal, I think that's it. Now that's a disaster, because that means the opposition, particularly if you're away from home, are just going to hammer you, just constantly keep the ball all the time, and it's just going to be chance after chance, ball after ball into the area. And let's face it, although we're improving, you don't necessarily think that Everton are going to be able to keep a clean sheet for 90 when you've got a decent team attacking you all day long. And nonetheless, that happened. They go and equalise after a few minutes. And again, there's two occasions straight away inside the first 10 minutes where I've thought, this is us going in shit for the rest of this game. To score first means automatically you're going to go sit back. Which, fair play to Dyche in the way they are. The system we have, they like to just call that up before they go on a counter-attack to Everton. And then when, after that long, they get a penalty, after we've gone back in front, they get a penalty. which I don't want to spend too long on him, but I thought he was a disgrace. Eze, I'm a big fan of his. But he was throwing himself about, some ridiculous things he did, diving about. Thankfully, the referee wasn't confident with the second one. But the persistence we had to stay how we were was really impressive and somewhat surprising to me, Matt. The midfield area as well. There seems to be a consistency now. He's found how he wants to shape this midfield, rather than at the end of the game. One of the main things we're talking about is, well, why is he running on? Why isn't he dropped deep? Why haven't we got a flat midfield at certain times? It didn't look like there was any sort of consistency. This again being very different to Brighton as well was one that I was particularly interested in, given how different you had to play against the side that is probably the complete opposite to a Brighton team. In order to get them in the shape that he wanted, to play how they did, and I wouldn't go as far to say counter-attacking, because let's face it, Crystal Palace played quite deep themselves. There was an input of decent passing of the ball, and again, something that I don't think we've been particularly any good at. This looked like a different Everton, and I know these are the classic kiss of death here, because we come back and play Man United at home the next game, don't we?
I can't wait for that game. I'm sure we'll talk about that more during the international break, but I think that's a perfect game for us after the break. Absolutely, perfect kickoff time, perfect opponent. I can't wait for that. But like I said, we'll talk about that more towards the end of the break.
Yeah, and that's it. You've said it yourself there in a matter of seconds, how you're looking forward to a game. The fact it's at Goodison is the issue we really need to sort out right now, because I've said this in the last fortnight. I feel much more comfortable when Everton are playing away from home than at Goodison. And if you look to it with hindsight now, you look to the fact we've only won one home game, and the other teams that we've played be a hell of a lot. I know we're relatively comfortable as it stands, but we'd be smack in the middle of this the Premier League table had we been learning how to do this. And I do think that's an issue for Dyche, to get the home performances in better shape than what we see when we go away, because it seems to suit us when we're away from home.
Well, something you just said then just made me actually think in regards to Dyche being pragmatic. And I imagine if people were talking about Everton and their away form and looking at the results, that I think they would expect us to get our away points in a certain way, given who our manager is. But I don't think by any means this has been Everton going to grounds and sitting in with 11 lads on the goal line from minute one. Because if you actually look back through the fixtures we've had away from home under Dyche, and I've only just thought of this now, so I'll look into it a bit more ahead of one of the shows in the week. But you go Nottingham Forest last season, penalty we score after 10 minutes to Mari Gray. You go to Brighton away, we score within a minute of starting that game. We score early at Leicester, Calvert-Lewin penalty as well. And then you go into this season, we score an early goal at Sheffield United. We score an early goal at Brentford. We score within a minute of the kickoff at the weekend. We score within 10 minutes against Aston Villa in the League Cup. This isn't a team that's going to all these grounds and just going, right, come at us and we'll soak everything up. I think at times away from home, and maybe this kind of plays into what other managers think of Dyche and the way he wants us to play, but we seem to go after teams and try and catch them cold. And look at the goal to start off at the weekend, for example. Having your left back in the 6-yard box getting on the end of a cross 50 seconds into the game. That's not a team that's come to sit in and soak up pressure and defend entirely. That's a team that's on the front foot and being positive and being aggressive. And maybe he's not got quite enough credit for that at times. Maybe he's still viewed as this manager who will set his stall out and play for set pieces. And while, listen, we have been good at that, and we've had to do that at times in these games. You look at all those examples there, and that's a team that's going to these grounds and going, you know what, we actually quite fancy this, and we're gonna try and put you on the back foot straight away and be proactive instead of waiting to see what you do.
I know every week you do the preview with whoever we've got on. I think it's an interesting thing that I'd look, well, obviously we'll hear it as we go through the season, how much different clubs don't want to play against Everton as much as they have done previously, because of exactly what you've said there. I think it does. It catches a lot of side cold, I think, like Palace then. when you're scoring goals early on, and when you just as soon as the whistle goes, everyone's stamping forward. I know it's obviously not that sort of crazy what we try and do,
Well,
but
it kind of was, wasn't it, on Saturday? Like,
but the point I mean that is he's not going to have or every defender going forward to a corner that goes in. I'm talking about the enthusiasm that we start with, where you've got those fullbacks running forward. You've got Calvert-Lewin interested in dropping a little bit deeper, trying to receive the ball, have someone run up there alongside them, like Decore's done it many times. And I don't think that many opponents, unless they've done the homework properly, which I wouldn't imagine they do anyway, because it's not something they necessarily think of. Oh, Everton on the counter-attack. That's the main thing we need to put when we go into training. It will shock a few sides, and I think you're right about the dice side of things. I think it's something that I think many people had actually spent hours talking about this fella. You think back to when we first got him, and obviously it's to have another conversation about this, perhaps while the international breaks smack in the middle of everything. But the narrative that's gone with him since he came in to where we are up to now, and you've just mentioned it perfectly there, is you're looking at somebody who hasn't just stuck with his guns from what people have expected from him. I mean, I'll be honest, when I thought we were getting him at any point before we even got Lampard, and when he was mentioned around Benitez times, so many people, and I bet you they'd lie to you now, would be saying, I don't want Everton anywhere near associated with Sean Dyche, given that he was sacked, or virtually sacked against Burnley the year they last went down, given the reputation he's got around how they play, given the times when we've gone there and played against them, thought, I really don't want to play Burnley because it's just not going to be a nice game of football to watch. Those stereotypes, I think, I wouldn't say they're completely gone, but I'd say they're quite vastly starting to remove from people's first opinions of him. And it makes me start to think about those days in Burnley. You're thinking, maybe he just played like that because that's the actual team and squad that he's got there. That's the only reason he can play with that team. And I've certainly been thinking that about us, obviously in a completely different regard. I look at these things and I think, well, Everton are playing different than what you'd expect from Sean Dyche, but he's looking at what he's got and getting the best out of each of them, what he's got. And I just think that's such a sensible approach that he's taken. Listening to how he talks as well. I know a lot of people think it's pretty boring because he bangs on about the same thing every week, but when he talks, it's almost like he has that belief in his mind when he's speaking. You'll have been along and listened to a lot of it as well, Matt. And when you're aware so much of what he's come out with, the comments he's made, and he bats everything. Everything goes straight back to journalists with a straight bat. Probably and speaking to Joel Thomas about this. It's not the ideal thing you want when you go on to write a piece about what's just happened at a press conference or indeed working in audio. But there's a consistency to it that we haven't really had. And I mean, would you go as far as saying this is refreshing the way Sean Dyche has been because we're only 12 games into a season, or are we going too far to say that sort of thing?
I think it's annoying when you're losing. Like that's what I would say. Like I think earlier in the season, like when we were losing those games and he was staying within that kind of bubble of perspective that he has, I think, going more away from being a journalist and broadcaster to being a fan, I think you want that extra bit of emotion, don't you? You want that passion. And that's not to say he's not a dispassionate fella, but I think when he comes off the sidelines and goes into interviews and goes into press conferences, he's been in this industry long enough to be able to just switch into that mode. Do you know like when you switch into the mode of not swearing when you're around your parents when you were a kid? Like you'd be in school and you'd say all kinds of terrible language, and then you'd get home and you just automatically switch into that mindset of, right, I'm not going to swear anymore. It's a bit like that. I like Dyche. Dyche is not swearing in front of his parents is effectively like he goes into press conferences and he just goes into that mode, and it is annoying. But I think now we're the other side of it. You can say, having that gravitas to perspective has really helped us, because I imagine as much as I think he goes into a bit of a mode, and maybe sometimes it's not totally sincere what he's got to say. I imagine that message about we're doing the right things, XG, things are going to turn for us, was probably drilled into the players as well. And I'm sure while there would have been moments where they felt down about it, that the spirits and the ideas would have still permeated through, and maybe we're seeing that now. But again, if it flips, it might be a bit different. But
Yeah.
I think he's just always going to be. I don't really get the sense from him that he likes doing things like press conferences or media. He's very much a football manager who wants to manage his football team, and that's it. And he could probably do without all the other stuff
Yeah.
if he wanted. But no, I think, listen, early in the season, I think he got a lot of criticism. I was pretty critical of him a lot of times, but if you look at the way we've gone about things since the international break, the last international break, going to Anfield and being quite unlucky there. Really, you could say in hindsight now, with that non-red card for Canate, who knows how that football match would have been. But it's take 7 points from 9 in the last 3 Premier League games with some tricky fixtures in there. Progressing in the cup as well. It's been a really good few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think I banged on about this quite long, but I think it's important to keep discussing about that. And I think we touched upon it in terms of how we've played, sort of in the first 20 minutes of what we've been talking about, the possession stuff. And it was interesting. I was talking to a fan last week, and it was look, perhaps people are taking this out of context because Brighton scored really late and denied us 3 points, and the way in which we played in that game, Brighton dominated. 99% of the game, they had us ping back in our own half, only up to the halfway line at times. You know, Calvert-Lewin trying to be somebody who's chasing things on as it goes. The ball's played out. I don't know whether that was a lot to do. I think it was to do for us to go 1-0 up here and defend what we've got against the side that most games against any side in the Premier League has the majority of possession. Thing that got me, and a thing that we spoke about in the last couple of weeks actually, is how the patience of a lack of possession is really showing with how we are. Now, what I mean about that is, look, it's easy for someone to say to me, referring to that as in, oh, Sean Dyche must say to them in training every week before a match, hey lads, you need to learn how to play when you've only got 25-30% of the ball. This is what's so you need to do this, and this. I don't think that can be the case whatsoever, because essentially, how can you practice in training by saying you're not going to have much of the ball? I don't think it's able unless you were to get, I don't know, team of under 21s in there, and you'd have sort of a behind closed doors match where you make one other side to dominate possession. I just don't think there's not a way you can do that. I'd love to know if there was and how it's done possibly. But the formula we seem to have like that, and I've searched through every single game that we've had so far this season, and I think bar 1 or 2, and I think that was like Doncaster, we've had less possession of the ball than our opponents in a large way in most of them, Matt. And I'm talking like the one that shocked me and surprised me and made me think about it a lot more was Burnley at home in the League Cup. You're playing against Burnley, who are really struggling. I know Vincent Kompany's got what he wants to do there. He's trying to come up with a style of play that he thinks will keep them in the Premier League. Ironically, it's not working from what we've seen so far. And the other irony is that Sean Dyche was the one who played in a different style of play that actually made them more successful in the Premier League a few years ago. But when I've looked at this and I've seen, like, if you were told before a game that you'd only have 25-30% of the ball, away against Crystal Palace, away against Brentford, away against West Ham, you'd think there's no way we've come out of that game with a positive result.
Oh, I don't know. I think I would. Like now,
I mean this the way it is now. I'm not just saying like in general. I mean, and this is the thing when I was talking to this guy about the game itself against Brighton, and he's saying to me, I can't put up with that shit. If Everton are playing like that, regardless of the scoreline, I don't want to go into Goodison. And I think that would what fits in with what I was saying before about we've only got that one win at home against Bournemouth. How many times we go to Goodison, even in the best of days, where our fans get really impatient about certain things that happen in games, and one of them in particular will be we're not attacking much because we don't have enough of the ball. That is going to take a lot of patience for us to be that side. It wasn't as noticeable last season, and we were okay at Goodison last season with Dyche, but I think now with that possession, it often, and maybe it's just me, it astonishes me the fact that we're still getting positive results, but that's where there's more credit that goes to Dice and this side to stay so disciplined when you're playing a game where you think, you know what, we need to do a lot more, i.e. against Crystal Palace, they still had a hell of a lot more the ball than us. One way we were a lot better. I think when we had it, I think what we do, Matt, is when we have possession, it feel far more important than when you have more of it. Like, it's crucial. We've got the ball. We've got to do something positive with this because we're not going to have it as much. Let's be honest about this. And it's I don't know. I don't know what you think, and obviously listeners to this are probably going to get involved in this, but they can, and it goes without saying, it's obvious that they're fine with it as long as we win games. But are they okay with that? Is the way Everton are, the way Everton play these days, that pragmatic, what we said before about Dyche and the way he sorted things out.
It's
Just obviously watching what you see at Goodison will make a difference for many people who go there to watch. But can you see that persisting and being positive for us? I know it's been 100% positive recently, the results, the wins we've got by not having much of the ball compared to opponents. Is that something that across a season is going to be successful?
I think it's something that will obviously have a sell by date because the danger with this style of football is that as soon as you stop winning, it's like, well, what are we here for? But I think there's like a general appreciation now from the fan base that we are a team that is in the lower mid-table region of the league. It's all about points. We haven't got players who can split as centre backs and play out from the back. We can't do all those things.
But did that not always change when maybe
no, like
no, but you start winning games like that, and we get to a stage that I don't know. Look, with 3 points off or 4 points off, like 12th, 11th, 12th, or something like that, and wherever Chelsea are and whatever people are talking about there, and sides that are above us. And I think right now, is that attitude's changed for us, given recent results, recent wins, that you're looking up the table now as opposed to thinking, wow, we're 8 points ahead of the bottom three. Again, the bottom three are the three sides that came up, by the way, which a lot of people have doubted this season, probably figures out that way. But when people start looking up, and I've seen loads of people say that to our reply, saying it was negative in the post matches and stuff like that, when there's a little bit of trepidation when you're like, I'm not sitting there thinking, oh, Everton can make it into the top 10. It's obviously a sad thing to say these days, but got people saying to me, do you know what? If we stay like this, you're looking at top 7, top 8. Everton not going anywhere near that, in my opinion, anyway. And I think that's what most sensible fans would say.
It's just one step at a time, isn't it? Like, the manager's not even been here a year yet. We've had so many different types. He's still got a squad which is built from previous managers. Yeah. I think style of play is the last thing on my list personally. Really, I think what I want to see is just a team that's, I don't really look too deep into the stats and stuff like that, but even all those seem to indicate this is a team getting better. But just in terms of the eye test and what I've seen of Goodison recently and what I've seen from these away games, this is a team that is getting better. And for now, that will do for me. Style and all that sort of stuff can come later. If Everton are staying 8 points clear of the relegations over the rest of the season, I'm absolutely fine. We are going to wrap up the show this week, Dave, by, like I said, a quick chat about some of your favourite moments from football, either in the Premier League or around the globe. I'm going to start off with mine. I've got a couple of honourable mentions as well, and they're both from Spain. So the first one involves our former manager Rafael Benitez, who's had a lot of late goals go against him this season in La Liga. Last week he had a goal go against him, which VAR gave, and he started talking about NASA and the laws of physics and stuff in his post-match. Honest to God, I'm not even messing there. So he lost it a bit then. And back in action again this weekend, Celta, they were at Athletic Bilbao, and they conceded a 97th minute penalty to lose 4-3. So they had a bit of a shocker. And the other story, which is definitely worth following, from La Liga this season is Girona. Have you seen where they are in the table in La Liga, Dave?
No,
The top of the table.
Girona.
Yeah, so they're ahead of Real Madrid and Barcelona. They've had an absolutely incredible season. The record after 13 games reads 1-11 draw, one lost one. And this weekend they won 2-1. I forgot who it was. They won 2-1 at Rayo Vallecano. So they are having an incredible season. They've got a bit of a mad team. With some familiar players in there. Some you won't recognise well. Daley Blin's there at the moment, off of Man United. Former City midfielder Yangel Herrera's there as well. So they're having Gazaniga, do you remember him from Southampton and Tottenham?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I remember him. Yeah,
yeah. So they've got a bit of a mixed bag of a team, but they're absolutely flying high. But the best moment of the weekend, Dave, was in Italy. Federico Di Marco at the San Siro in the 43rd minute scored from just inside his own half, from out on the left-hand side.
And how does he score, Matt? Tell the listeners how you think he scored.
Well, you don't think he meant it. And I'm sure people have seen this on social media, gone viral now. And my view is that if he's mishit that is some mishit. And that's the only reason I think he's not fluked it in. Because if that's a cross, that is a terrible cross. Like, we're looking at like a Wobie level crossing.
No, it's
for that.
I don't know. We'll put a poll on this when we put the link onto Twitter.
Just leave your comments on YouTube if you think.
Yeah, please do. I don't think he's meant it whatsoever, because firstly, I don't think I've seen, to my knowledge, ever seen a winger who's really as far as you can get on a left-hand side or a right-hand side, have it in their minds it's going to be the audacity to have a goal of lobbing the goalkeeper from where they actually are. If you think about it in your mind, it's, remember Beckham against Wimbledon all those years ago, but directly on one of the sides. He's left-footed, and it's a remarkable strike. I'll give you that. But the point I made was, and you might, hopefully people will agree with me more than you, was they had two forwards running through, and I think he's tried to whip one into them when they're on the counter attack and trying to get in behind the other side's back four, and I think he's completely mishit it. But mishit it perfectly. It's gone over the keeper, and it's gone into the back of the net. And obviously, I'd love to see an interview, but he's never, ever, ever going to tell the truth if he didn't mean it. So,
did you see John Joe Shelby score? Absolutely. Did you see John Joe Shelby score from his own half in Turkey as well this weekend?
John Joe Shelby?
Yeah, he definitely meant it.
Matt, you must be loving this, mate, because ever since I've known you, I don't think I know anybody who loves European football more than you. So you must have had the field day looking at all this stuff going on. The other side, I did want to point towards it as well. Actually, what is going on at Ajax?
Well, yeah, I've not read loads about that recently, but they've picked up a little bit again, haven't they? They're off the bottom of the table.
Yeah. But Brighton did them last week as well, didn't they?
Yeah, I didn't see what the result was at the weekend, but I mean, it's an absolute disaster, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I tell you one, to compare that goal you've just mentioned, it wasn't anything like Harry Kane's the other day.
No, it was not. No.
But,
that's John Joe Shelby's was though. So
I need to go and watch this then. But
Ajax are out the relegation zone anyway. They drew at the weekend. But what was your favourite moment of the weekend football?
Yeah, I mean, mine's come much closer to home, and what I think many people will be talking about anyway, so it might be a little bit boring, but it's actually two games that Chelsea have featured in. The first one against Tottenham, which I
can't have that, Dave. It was a week ago.
It's probably not classed this week. Anyway, I just wanted to say I don't think I've seen a half of football that was as crazy as that in Premier League history. I don't think I've seen anything like that. You know that Chelsea going to go on and win it, and they did. But I think a lot of people have referred to it as well with Postecoglou's the way he's set up, and he's basically put every player he's got on the halfway line, and there's not much been made of it since then. I think it'll be spoken about a lot more because they lost against Wolves this weekend. But when you've got a team of whippets like Chelsea have, they need to simply stay in their own half, and they're going to be through on goal. So was that, and then I can't not speak about the 4-4 at Stamford Bridge last night, which again, I suppose technically doesn't count as this week either, Matt. But
No, you
that
can
was
have that. It was the last weekend. That's
yeah. Is that
our
okay?
range. Yeah, yeah.
Because it's hours ago. You got to have it hours ago. But yeah, I think it was a fantastic game. I think Man City were going to pitch it. In the end, the way in which they come back to 2-2, then with 3-2. Staggering game to watch. I think I haven't seen too much of him. Many listeners might have, but Cole Palmer looks like an absolute superstar, and he's certainly going to be one anyway. I think from what I heard after the match, he chose to leave Man City to go to Chelsea, and that's a brave thing to do at his age, as young as he is, to decide to go and do that. Firstly, to leave the team that's just done the treble. He's probably looked at things thinking, how am I ever going to get ahead of Erling Haaland? We're not going to play two strikers up there, although I know they start to do that a little bit with Alvarez just behind him and running around. But the way in which he is as a striker, he's done well to have that thought, to have that peace of mind to think, I'm not staying here because I'm not getting a go. Similarly, though, to Tuesday, you're going to Chelsea's not exactly too different, is it? The amount of players they've actually got to stand in front of him. But Pochettino's played him for the last few games. I think there's an edge to how he plays that he needs to sort of fit into his game. But it's the exact kind of thing you'd expect from a young player. Watching him yesterday against City, obviously he's going to have a hell of a lot of emotion against City because he's from there. He decided to come away from them for 41 million quid. He's got a lot on his shoulders there, Matt, going to a place like that. I thought he was brilliant. The role he played as well, played on the left and right hand side different times. He wasn't playing as a striker, which is a little bit new to him as well. And I think he was brilliant in everything that he did. I'm a real admirer of his now. Scored the penalty as well to get it back to the 4-4. Looks a hell of a lot older on his shoulders than how he actually is. And I think similar to adore Brighton striker Evan Ferguson. I think you've got two there who I hope stay in the Premier League for their entire careers because they're just fantastic to watch.
My favourite thing about that Palmer is when he gets interviewed, like he must be a nightmare because he is one of those footballers who just gives like if you get 10 words out of him, you've done well.
Yeah,
To answer
yeah.
Like they'll set him up like a big, long question, and then he'd be like, yeah, made up.
That's the man.
Sound that like that's like the type of lad he is, isn't he?
Yeah, me and you should be here of doing that where you'll spend, I don't know, 20, 30 seconds asking your question. The answer you get back isn't anywhere near as long as what you've actually asked. You think, I'm going to look a nightmare here because this fellow won't even talk to me.
Yeah, he's a reporter's nightmare, but like I said, he is a lovely footballer. But...
Oh, yeah, the one thing I wanted to mention, Martin, I think when we were sort of preparing for the show today, I think the Premier League race is incredibly well poised. And I know we're only 12 games in, a third of the season in, but you look at what's going on there. You've got first to fifth, 3 points separating a lot of them. Villa, Spurs, Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City. When we come back, have you seen the games that on the day that we come back?
Liverpool, isn't it? Yeah,
the two big ones, City, Liverpool, us against Man United. And I just think I hope it sticks out this way. I know it probably won't. The way City just descend to, they'll run free at some point. They've got Liverpool at home as well, so they're probably expecting to win that. But I think it's going to be really entertaining. I mean, look at how poor United have been. I mean, they're on 21 points now. That's only 7 points off top. So
top of the Premier League form table, United, which is mad. Like there's like all the terrible results have come in the cups and the Champions League, but
they've been getting ripped apart all over the place. Ten Hag looks like he's about to just start hitting people. It's going to be quite a bizarre season, and then just to finish to go down to us now. Obviously, we're up to the heights of 14th, but we are 3 points off West Ham in 9th. Beat United, it's all sorted for Europe.
We'll smash them. Pretty pleased.
Never heard you that confident.
Yeah. I don't know. Just something about that. I just think it's a great game for us. Like, but cross fingers that we don't get any injuries or anything during the international break. But we'll leave it there. Let us know who you thought was our best player on Saturday, or any other Everton players that caught your eye over the weekend. I know the guys had a tough result, but apparently it was a good performance against Chelsea. So it might be a few to mention from there as well. And let us know if you saw anything madder than DeMarco's wonder goal / fluke over the
Do you
course.
need to give us a vote on whether you think that's
Yeah,
legit?
let us know what you think about that. Yeah, I'm still saying he meant it. Dave doesn't think otherwise.
No,
But yeah, we'll be back again next Monday. It'll be an international break, so we'll have to mix things up a little bit, but still be plenty to talk about. And we'll be with you every Monday going forward as well. So hit subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. Subscribe to us if you're listening to the podcast as well. Leave a rating, leave a review. It is always appreciated. But that's it from me and Dave. That's been Blue Monday. We'll speak to you again next week.